Hi there, this is just going to be a very quick ex explanation on how to determine the regions that represent your probabilities under the bell curve. So I'm just going to go through like different scenarios here. Um, so I've just picked an arbitrary mean value, okay, of 20, and I forgot to put sigma down here, but I can tell you it's 2.5. Okay, but you'll see that in the examples that we're going for here. So, and throughout all these problems, I've stuck with my means 20, standard deviation sigma is 2.5, 2.5, my two x values are 16 and 25. Okay, so I'm just going to get my z scores, okay, for both of them. First one comes out negative. For the table, use positive 1.6, and second one, 5 over 2.5, is going to give me 2 exactly. So take both of those. I'm not going to show you the table. You know how to do that, so just trust me. So for 1.6 and 2 on the tables, it gives me those two values there. So I'm calling them P1 and P2 here. That might change depending upon the regions. Okay, right, so so the following scenarios will either involve only one of these p-values or both. Okay, right, this first scenario is they're talking about less than 16. Okay, that's what they're talking about, less than 16 here. So for us here, so can you see less than 16 is there? Right. So, and 16 is to the left of the mean. So that's why we know it's in that region there. Right, okay. So I'm referring to that there as P2. Okay, so I'm referring to that as P2. So I can't get that unless I get P1. Okay? Because P1 and P2, they add up to giving exactly a half. Because when you're using the table, all values they give you are coming away, okay, from the curve. I get carried away there. They're coming away, right? So here, I need to calculate P1, okay? I've already done that, so I'm showing you there. But hopefully you've seen that P1 and P2 give me a half. Okay, so I just need to get that little bit at the end. So like you can see there, I'm telling you, P1 and P2 is a half. So we want P2. So to get P2, that must be just a half takeaway P1. Okay, and it is. So just go and get your P1 value, pop it in, and there's your probability. Okay, so P2 is referred to as a tail end probability. And when it's tail end, that only region you're interested in, it's always a half takeaway that. Okay, next scenario. What we're looking at here is greater than 16. We can see here, greater than 16 is this region here. Okay, so you can see upstairs, P1, it comes from the table, and the other part, P2, it's half of the curve. So that's where we get those values there. And if you're looking at two regions, either side of the mean, you must add both of those. Okay, so it's just going to be P1 and P2 here. Right, so I can see P1, it came from the table, and like we say, P2, it's half the area under the curve. So we're just going to add those together. Okay, and then there's your final probability. Right, next scenario. Again, this is a tail end scenario. Okay, it's tail end scenario P2. We don't have that because the table only measures values that come away from the mean. So we've calculated that already. I might have referred to that as P2 before, but that doesn't matter. For the purposes of this question, I've already evaluated it from the table, 0.4772. So here, because it's a tail ender, it has to be a half minus, okay? But we can see here, the reason for that, P2, so to get P2, the relationship there is P1 plus P2 is a half, so that means that P2 itself, it must be a half take away P1. So that is how I get that next line there. We can see P1 up there, we got it from the tables, just subtracted. Okay, it's been evaluated. So let's move on. Next scenario. Right, we have got two regions either side of the mean. That means that's why we add them. So regions either side, you add. So what we can see here, P1, because it's coming away from the mean to the right, we've already evaluated that there. So we'll get P1 there. And you see P2, it is half the curve. Okay, so we're just going to add those. Okay, so P1, P2, P1 plus a half, get P1 in there, add them together, and that's our final probability. Okay, next and maybe final scenario. Okay, what if we're looking at between two values? Well, if you're looking at between two values, again, we're going to be adding, okay, because both are coming away from the mean. So that is why we're going to be adding these. Don't worry about my writing here. I'm using the mouse. Okay. So P1 and P2, they've already been evaluated. Okay. We've got them on the right hand side. So that means P1 and P2, get your numbers and sum them together, and there's your final probability. So hopefully that helped. So in this one, we are looking at two areas either side of the mean. You got those directly from the table. Okay. Here, P1, you get that from the table because it's coming away from the right of the mean. And P2 was a half. Here, it's a tail ender, and tail enders, i.e. the highlighted part, they are always a half takeaway. Okay, P1 comes from the table because that's between 20 and 25 there. Anything that comes immediately to the right and left of the mean, that's a table job. Okay, this one here, two areas either side of the mean. P1, because it's not the entire half of the curve, we have to evaluate that using our z-score. P2 we can see is half the curve, so again we're adding. Right, here a tail ender, so just very quickly, tail enders, it's always a half takeaway, and P1 is immediately to the left of the mean, that's why it's a table value. So hopefully that's maybe explained it a little bit. I don't know, but this was a little bit of a rush job. So I'm going to leave it there and hopefully it helps you. Okay, this is going up on YouTube soon as.